Hi there, this is Erica Merrill, and I am the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And I am very honored and pleased to have with us this afternoon attorney Daniela Romero. And today we're going to be talking about something that I'm sure everybody has wondered about at some point in their lives, and that is going to be identity theft and how to avoid it and what happens when people get it. And I'm sure there's a lot of horror stories. Welcome today, Daniela. We really appreciate you joining us this late Friday afternoon.
Hi, Erica. Thanks so much for inviting me. And it's a great topic to discuss because it's rampant and it's getting, more and more prevalent in society, especially with the whole social media and internet.
Well, I'd like to jump right into this. How do people fall prey to identity theft? What are some of the ways that this comes about?
Well, most people are very good-hearted and trusting and can be naive, right? And a lot of times, it could be somebody that they know or somebody that they don't know. So there's so many ways to get involved with identity theft, without even realizing it. It usually comes down to somebody wanting to help somebody, and that's basically, what happens. Now, as far as the types of identity theft, is that something that you would like to know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody, like once in a while you'll see on Facebook, they'll hack in to your messenger, and then all of a sudden they're inviting everybody. They don't even hack into it. They just make a duplicate account, I believe. And then they try to contact all your friends, and you'll realize you were hacked that way. But and what is that about? And then what are some of the other ways that people's identity are stolen?
Well, very good point about the duplicate accounts, because I actually know someone that happened to. It was an elderly person, and she started getting messages from somebody, from a longtime friend that she hadn't seen in 50 years. Well, little did she know, the person, that she thought it was had been in the hospital for months. So had no contact at all with anybody, and this elderly person fell prey to just a person pretending to be that person, and they kept contacting her and telling her about some government program that she wanted her to sign up with the Social Security Department. And that's how that started. And they were emailing back and forth. And then finally, the person asked her to buy a bunch of like American Express cards and Visa cards. And, the elderly person didn't want to tell her family. I think it was, just by chance that somebody in her family found out about it. Now, as far as other ways of, having identity theft, it could be, so many different ways. It could be as simple as a bank card that's used at a gas station or in a, hamburger joint. It could be, mail theft. I've actually had that happen to me, where I got a, bank card and somebody stole it. The person is actually, they went to jail because of it. Then there's phishing emails. So a lot of times people will get emails and they click on a link, and then their data.
Or the prince that has like millions of dollars for you, but they just need your bank account number to deposit in. Is that
that's another one. There's so many different ways, that there could be identity theft. It's hard to actually keep up with all the ways. So you have to be very careful.
I mean, you've even heard of credit card companies and giant internet companies that where people put their credit cards in and save them, where they've somehow lost an entire list, hundreds of thousands of credit card numbers because their security isn't very tight, or somebody found a way in. I mean, do you have any examples of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are good, programs where you could keep, a lot of your your passwords and things like that. But you should have very safe passwords, and they shouldn't just be your granddaughter or grandson's name or even your child's name, and 1, 2, 3, 4. It has to be a very secure password. And there are programs that actually make long passwords for you. So, that's something that happens.
Now, is it like I've heard crazy stories about? I'm sorry, I thought you were like kind of near the end. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine.
Okay. I've heard of people not even realizing that their identity was stolen for a long time. So somehow somebody gets access to your social security number and your birth certificate, and they just go out and start getting a credit card that you don't even know is there. And then you might happen to go and apply for a loan, or maybe you're buying a house and they check your credit, and lo and behold, you've got all of these extra accounts that you didn't even know about. I mean, is that something you've heard of or you've had to deal with?
Yes, all the time. And actually, one thing that I tell my clients to do is they should check their credit reports 3 times a year. You're allowed to get a free credit report, and from each of the agencies, the 3 major agencies, and I actually divide it up. So I'll get one, from one like Experian in January, then I'll get another one in June, and then in September I'll get another free report, so that this way, you are constantly, getting information about your credit.
So the number one tip that everyone should take away from this right now is check your credit regularly. Even if you think everything is fine, even if you have great credit, I know some people are working on their credit score and they just want to check once in a while, but if you're not, you should check, because you'd be surprised of what happens. And sometimes, even if it's not theft, sometimes other people will charge things on your credit cards and you won't realize it, and you really have to keep up on all of that. So that's really good information to have about the credit reports and how you can get 3 free ones a year. Do you have to go directly to their website for Experian and the other couple?
No, you don't, but it's good to just go straight to them, and because then you're going, to the actual company, and it's not a link that you're clicking and could be at the wrong website, because sometimes other companies could have a similar name, a similar URL, so you can click on the wrong one and then end up having to pay for it, or you could even get scammed.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the things that they do with your identity, but have I missed anything? I mean, so far we've talked about opening up credit cards. What are some of the other things? They want to get your bank account to empty out your bank account. What are some of the other things they're doing with the identities?
Well, that somebody could get a job and just run up your debt with that, basically. So when we should have said this. Daniela is an attorney who helps fight bankruptcy and helps people through bankruptcy issues, and it's not always bankruptcy. Sometimes somebody's just having some issues and she's got another solution that doesn't involve filing for bankruptcy. But when you are working on this issue with people, do you find that people have, this is partly why they have to go bankrupt, because somebody has stolen their identity and run up all these bills and now they have no other options? Is that one of the things that happens? Actually, not very often, but it's just funny. In the past year, I've had, it happened to 3 or 4 people, where, family members stole somebody's information. And of course, I usually tell people, if you find out that your information has been stolen, one of the things you want to do is call the police. But, there's sometimes when a family member might, have an inkling that it was somebody that they know that stole, their information and use their credit. they may not want to call the police. So, but that's usually not the case, but I have seen that happen. But normally it's somebody that you don't know. And one thing that you want to do is definitely file a police report, because you want to be able to show that there's evidence that you didn't run up that debt. As far as other things that they can do, they should definitely contact the credit card company and notify them that there was a breach. They want to contact the credit reporting agencies and put a fraud alert on their account, so that, somebody can't continue to use their credit. You may, if the debt is already on your credit report, then you want to dispute it with the credit reporting agencies. And one thing that you want to do is use the police report that you filed, to show them that you didn't really use that. And then most important, well, not most importantly, but you've got to change all your passwords at that point,
So that's really interesting. And I actually have a firsthand situation. It was several years ago, but we were eating dinner at a Chili's in a mall, and the waitress gave us somebody else's bill with their credit card back. She had run the credit card and our credit cards at the same time. Then she went and she took the credit card over to our credit card over to this other person. He took our credit card and walked across the mall and bought a really expensive watch. If you can imagine that. Instead of saying,
I haven't heard of that before. That was like in real time.
It was just unbelievable, because you're just out having dinner. Like, if you got somebody's credit card back, you'd say, "Excuse me," but she just happened to give it to someone who was a thief and said, "I'll take this and go shopping." And that's a joke people make, but it actually really happened. And we called the credit card right away and found out because the guy didn't come back with our card, and they took the charge off. But it was that was pretty unbelievable.
One thing that I do often is I'll set alerts with credit card companies. So if you spend over a certain amount, it could be $50, or you want to set it at $100, what you can do is an alert. You'll get an email right away, that an amount was spent. So if you're sitting in the restaurant and, you happen to look at your phone, you'll see, a charge for $5,000 that comes up,
That's good. We have a lot of security on the credit cards nowadays. They don't, if you go out of state and you're spending, they'll shut it down on you. So hopefully you have a good credit card with that kind of security. But it can be very scary. So far, just to reiterate, we have a couple of tips you've given. One tip is to check your credit card, your credit report 3 times a year. The other one is to, if you lose something, if your wallet is stolen or whatever, file a police report, so that then if something is in fact charged, you have some backup data to give your credit card company to show that actually I did report it missing. And do it in a very timely manner, I would assume, is a really good tip.
And if it was something that happened through the mail, like what happened to me, where a new credit card had been stolen, in addition to filing a police report, I filed a report with the U.S. Post Office, because you want to get the federal, government involved too, because that's a federal crime.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a really good tip as well. And the other thing that I heard you mention earlier is changing your passwords. How often do you change your passwords? Are you just doing it if something like this happens, or are you using those companies you mentioned that give you these long passwords? I know most people.
I actually use a company, and there's several of them. I don't want to say one's better than the other, but it stores all my passwords, and it will tell me if, for instance, if there's been a data breach by some company. And, so it'll give me alert whether I should change a password. But then also it lets me know if I'm using one password too much. it will generate passwords for me, and usually you want it to be over 12, figures or numbers and letters and,
Absolutely. I mean,
make any sense, basically.
yeah, I like to be able to remember my passwords, and I'm always struggling with that. But yeah, I get it. You got to change them up sometimes, and you want to make sure that if people have your passwords and then you're no longer associating with them, that you change your passwords. So it's all really important. Now, if something really bad happens, because we've kind of covered, I have a question here. How do you prevent it from happening? And I think we've covered a lot on that. I guess before I move forward, are there any other ways to prevent your identity from being stolen that we haven't spoken about yet?
Yeah, actually, there is another one. For all the passwords, like your email passwords or, getting into some account, you should have a two-factor identification. And I know it's a pain sometimes, but, what'll happen is, you try to log into the account and then it'll ask you to check your phone and to, insert a code number. And that's two-factor, identification. And that helps stop just somebody from finding out your password and getting into your accounts.
Now, that's really great, two-factor authentication. And, I do a social media business, and as you know, it's always a little tricky trying to get into people's accounts with that, which just shows me that it works. I mean, for me to work with my clients, I have to get right with them like we did last weekend, and we logged in together, and that's a good way to know that, like, you trust me and you're doing it with me, and that is the only way we're actually getting it done. Because otherwise, if you didn't know about it, it would have been very difficult to get into those accounts. That is for sure.
There is another thing that you have to be careful about, unsafe internet connections, like, at the airport or other places, where there's just a, login to the internet. There are people that know how to get your information when you're just logged into one of these unsafe internet connections.
So being in a secure internet environment is a really good thing. And I know that for a lot of people, you can use your own mobile device as a hotspot, as your own secure network. You don't have to log into these free networks. A lot of times with those, they make you give out personal information to use it anyway. So there might be lots of reasons to avoid that. But certainly losing money and giving up your account numbers is one of them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I use hotspot shields, also when I'm in a, just unsafe location.
Wow. You are just like a super spy master. Love it. So on the bankruptcy side, how do you come back from identity theft? Are there any steps that you would suggest people should take?
Yes, well, for one, if you find that, there was identity theft, you want to call the police, file a police report. If the mail was involved, then you want to contact the U.S. Post Office. You want to immediately contact the, credit card issuer, or bank to let them know what's happened. You want to, alert the credit reporting agencies, file a fraud alert, maybe dispute any fraud on your credit report. You can dispute that with the agency. Like I said earlier, change your passwords. A lot of times, you'll have a positive outcome, but if you don't have a positive outcome from that and you end up with a lot of debt that you cannot deal with, then, the last thing that you can do is file bankruptcy and get rid of the debt.
I had a kind of a weird question that I just thought of now, and I feel like I've heard of this happening before, but children are issued Social Security numbers and they have birth certificates. I've heard of people stealing that identity, or even family members going out and running up credit card debt and that sort of thing on a child's number. I mean, have you heard of that? Am I imagining things?
No, you're not. And, it is true. You even have to check, your child's, credit There are red flags. They start getting mail, right, when they really shouldn't be getting any mail. There's something going wrong there. How is their name out there? I did have a client once where the father had used her Social Security, so she had, bad debt over a long period of time. She was an adult when she came to me, but she, recounted the story about when she was younger. So that it does happen.
Most people don't get debt until they start getting college loans. It's a terrible thing to have to start off start off with somebody doing that to you, and you haven't even started out in life yet. So would you suggest that they check their children's credit occasionally to make sure that nobody has stolen the identity? Because they could easily put in another address.
Yeah, it's a good idea, if you suspect it.
So do you have any other interesting stories that may have come up over the years about identity theft?
Well, I don't know if it's so much identity theft, but I've had some people come in where, especially now with the internet, you mentioned something about getting emails, from people who are, asking for help. I've had a few people where they're, supposed love interests that were contacting them, either through some social media, platform, and then, once they're in contact with them, tell them how much they love them and they, like that they need some money to, pay for, some family members, medical issue or something. And I have had that happen several times, and it's not just the elderly people. I've had it happen to a younger person where they really, wanted to believe that, somebody that they met over the internet was in love with them. And, they were asked to take out credit, to pay for things. One person told me that, that he bought Bitcoin for this love interest. So you have to be very careful.
Well, that is definitely a very scary situation. I mean, you think that just happens if you start being a pen pal for someone in jail, but it can happen. I mean, with the internet, people from the past come back, and you don't know, how they really are, and you can be unpleasantly surprised. I had a friend who had a bad situation with a husband, and ruining credit and everything. So it's a very scary situation when someone you love takes advantage of you, and then essentially ruins your life and your spending potential and everything else.
Yeah, that's right. But it is only temporary, even all of those things, and you could get past it. And if nothing else works, then you could always file bankruptcy to get rid of the debt. And I don't always suggest it, but when all else fails, that's maybe something that you need to just get past it and get a fresh start.
Absolutely. And would you suggest somebody uses an attorney such as yourself to navigate those waters and figure out how they can get that fresh start through bankruptcy?
Yes, absolutely. Because, like I mentioned on some of the cases where a love interest had somebody take out credit, you have to be worried that, maybe when you file bankruptcy, you're injecting yourself into the federal system, and you want to make sure that, the U.S. trustee's office or the trustee, or even the creditor that you borrowed money from doesn't think that you were in cahoots with the other person. So, you really do want to talk to somebody that knows what they're doing, that can protect you, and see where the red flags may be or the pitfalls may be, and give you the best advice.
Well, absolutely. And I think that, we've covered everything. This has been a really interesting topic this week, and I think it's going to help a lot of people avoid getting into that kind of a situation where somebody steals their identity and or somehow takes over their money and their ruins their credit and that sort of thing. I mean, the best way to stay out of bankruptcy is to not have that sort of thing happen to you in the first place. So if you can prevent it in any way with any of these several fantastic tips that you've given to us, then you definitely should. And if you have people in your family that cannot on their own protect themselves, like maybe you have an elderly person who, maybe you need to help them check their credit from time to time, or make sure that nobody has stolen your child's identity as well. Finding out 5 years later can be very detrimental to their life as far as their credit goes, and even getting hired in some cases.
Yeah, and with the senior citizens, you do, have to understand a lot of times they want to be independent, and they don't want to let everybody know about all of their, conversations, or it just may be innocent. But, like with this senior citizen that I mentioned, her family would have never known what was going on. And she really believed, the person that was contacting her. So, and she wasn't really familiar with, this was on Messenger and Facebook. So she's not really familiar with the whole Facebook platform, and didn't understand that there could be duplicate accounts, or that maybe this wasn't a government, agent contacting her. So it is important to have communication and ask questions, about what they're doing, or maybe even educate them.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your coming on today and letting us know about this on a Friday, right before everyone's probably running out to go use their credit cards. Be careful how you use them, and make sure that nobody's going to steal those identities, and check those credit reports, file reports if things are stolen. There's lots to do. Take care of your loved ones if they can't take care of themselves in this area. And definitely, if you are in trouble and you're in the Pasadena area, you absolutely need to visit attorney Daniela Romero, because she will be able to give you your options and let you know what you need to do to get yourself a fresh start and get out of some of the trouble that may not even have been your fault, but you need the help, and she's a professional and she's amazing. So thank you so much for sharing all this information with us today. And can't wait to talk to you next week and find out what topic we're going to be discovering next week.
Well, thanks, Erica. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone, really learned from this. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can always contact me, especially if you're in the Pasadena area. And
all right. Well, have a great weekend, everybody. And thank you so much for watching. We'll be talking to Attorney Romero next week on Facebook Live. And then you'll see some of these interviews out on the other social media platforms as well in the coming weeks. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good weekend, and we will talk to you next week. Okay.